Hey readers, my name is Marley and welcome back to my channel and to another reading wrap-up. Today is the last day of February, so I'm going to talk about all of the books that I read in February, which was 7 books. So not as good as last month, but February is a shorter month, you know. Before we get into the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you have not already. I upload bookish videos every single week, so you don't want to miss that. This month, I'm going to be talking about the books in the order of my lowest rated to my highest rated. So let's start out with Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. This is an adult romance that follows these two characters, Marcus and April. Marcus is a famous TV actor in this really big TV show that is sort of like Game of Thrones in our world, but it's kind of based on like Roman mythology. And then April is this woman who is a geologist and she's a really big fan of the show. And actually both of them secretly write fan fiction for the show, and they are sort of online pals, but they have never met. And then one day April posts like a cosplay photo of herself dressing up as a character from the show, and Marcus sees it because a bunch of people are hating on her due to her being plus size. So he kind of stands up for her and asks her out on a date. So then they start getting to know each other IRL as well. It's kind of one of those standard conflicts where they don't know that they know each other from their online personalities as well, and so they're kind of falling in love with each other in both areas. This book was really good in terms of fat representation, learning disability representation, and I think that it would be really fun for people who are into the fan fiction community, as there's a lot of little like excerpts from fan fictions that the characters wrote, and obviously they are both really big fans of fan fiction. However, for me, this book flopped a little bit. I ended up giving it only 3 stars because it just was too steamy for me too quickly, which so many people like. But if you are familiar with my channel, you'll hear me talk about how I don't really like when books get steamy right away or when there's too much of it. So for me, it just was not one of my favorite romances, but I definitely see why it is so highly praised. And if you're really into fan fiction and into steam, I think you would probably really enjoy this book, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. And to see more of my thoughts on this and a couple other romances, make sure to check out my romance reading vlog, which I will link in the cards and down below, where I read some romance books for Valentine's Day. Speaking of that reading vlog, I also read From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata, and I also gave this 3 stars. So if you haven't heard of this book, our main character is Jasmine, and she is a professional figure skater. However, her career isn't really going as well as she would like it to. And then this guy, Ivan Lukov, it's Ivan, right? Yeah. He is like the best skater at her rink. He's won gold medals, all that sort of stuff. He actually asks her to be his partner. But the only thing is, they hate each other because she is friends with his sister. For like years they've known each other, and they've always bickered and hated on each other and kind of bullied each other, and they're forced to be partners. It has a lot of great tropes like that of like forced proximity, enemies to lovers, great tropes. However, obviously it was not perfect for me. So I would say this is a very slow burn romance, which I definitely was a fan of that. As I just said, a spoiler alert, that was an issue I had with it. So it was nice to read a very drawn out romance where they actually become friends first before becoming lovers. They don't get together till very close to the end of the book. I really like those types of stories. However, by the time they did get together in this book, it just didn't feel right to me. Like, it didn't feel exciting anymore. It was almost like the tension died away. And also there were a couple like kind of problematic things, I'll say, with the relationship. Just for me, maybe not even problematic, but as a personal preference, I feel like sometimes he would get a little bit too mean to Jasmine about some of her insecurities, such as her weight. And she also had a learning disability in this book as well, and I feel like they could have done a better job with some of that. There were also just some weird things with the writing that weren't perfect for me, which I think is due to the fact that this is a indie published book instead of a traditionally published book where you have more editors and stuff looking at the book. I will say there was only one steamy scene in it, and it actually was pretty good. It didn't get too detailed, and I actually did like that scene. So there you go. Next up, we're going to talk about Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is the last book I read in the month, and it is also the second book in the Red Rising series, which is a YA sci-fi dystopian / fantasy series. And I have to say, if you like those types of books, I really do recommend this series. However, I did only give this second book 3.5 stars, which is not too bad, but a little bit less enjoyable than the first book in the series, which I gave 4 stars. So jumping back to the first book, basically you're following this kid named Darrow who is on Mars, and he is a part of the like Red faction because they live in this world that's like a caste system where you're in all these different levels of colors. So like golds are the best, silver, blah, 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 all the way down to red being the lowest. So a classic trope in these dystopian novels, it's always pretty fun seeing the underdogs rise up. When something really tragic happens to him, he ends up like infiltrating the higher up people in this world, and he is going to take them down from within. That's kind of like the main point of this series. The first one was really fun because I had like a school competition environment. This second one took me quite a while to get into because we have a like 2-year time jump. I also had a few months in between reading the books, so I was so confused as to who all the different characters were. We had characters from the first book, and then we had characters that were new to this book, but Darrow already knew them because he's known them for 2 years because there was a time jump. So I don't think Pierce Brown is the best at like letting us know what's going on in like clear terms. I heard someone say this, I think it was Christine from the Roomies Digest, that like you really have to be paying attention like every second of this series or you're gonna miss things. That's definitely true. Like, I think even if you're paying attention, some things are gonna go over your head. It's just so hard to follow all of the sci-fi terms that are going on with this world, with the politics. This is a very like political heavy series. And then along with all the characters who also, some characters have multiple names that they go by. So if you do read this series, I would recommend reading the books very close together, maybe even back to back, and just binging it so you can remember everything that's going on. There's a lot of action scenes, and sometimes I just did not know what was happening, and that was really a struggle for like the first half of the book. This book did take me like almost a whole week to read just because it just felt so dense. But then in another weird way, it's also written in such a fast-paced way at the same time. Like, even though I'm not sure what's going on, I'm still like reading it kind of quickly, and by the end I finally wrapped my head around who all the characters were and everything like that, and it's so good at the end, and there's big plot twists, and it's shocking and it's upsetting, and I am actually really excited to read the third one. It's almost like Sarah J. Maas books as well, where like the first part I'm kind of trudging through, but then they always leave it on a really great note at the end. So yeah, 3.5 stars just because I had some issues, but by the end you're left being like, oh my god, this was so good. But I'm trying to rate on like the whole book, you know. Speaking of sci-fi, we have Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. This is the second book in the Cinder series, or the Lunar Chronicles series, and Cinder was the first book. These are essentially retellings of different princesses. The first one was Cinderella, and this one is clearly Red Riding Hood. But it takes place in this, you know, futuristic sci-fi world where there's this plague going on. There's like cyborgs, Cinder's a cyborg, there's conspiracies, and there's like lunar people who are basically like from the moon. They're kind of like evil, at least this evil queen is. And she's kind of trying to like take over Earth. Anyways, the first book was great. I really like Cinder. This book, it took me a little while to get into as well because now we're following a whole new character, Scarlet, or Red Riding Hood. And it was almost like restarting a series all over again because I'm like forgetting the world, common theme apparently for me. It's a whole new character you're getting to know and like her side of the universe or her side of the world. And I have to be honest, I did not enjoy Scarlet as much as Cinder as a character or her storyline. And I think I've heard other people say that as well. But thank God we do still get chapters from Cinder and some other characters in this book, which was really nice to see because those are the characters we're more invested in. I think if we didn't have those chapters, maybe I would have had a chance to get more connected with Scarlet, but because she didn't get her own book like Cinder did, I was really just dying for those Cinder chapters to see what was going on with her. Again, by the end, I was really enjoying it, liked seeing all of our characters come together, and still really looking forward to the rest of the series and a few more princesses. And I rated this one 4 stars. Oh, another thing that I think wasn't as good was the romance between Scarlet and Wolf. I think Cinder and Kai from the first book are cuter, and I just kind of wish Scarlet and Wolf were more shippable for me. Next up, we have Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This is another 4 to 5 star rating for me, and I have a whole spoiler-filled vlog if you've read the book and want to hear my spoilery thoughts. But for non-spoilers, this is Colleen Hoover's newest release, and we're following our protagonist, Kenna, and she is a young woman, like 26 or something, and she's just getting out of jail. She's been there for like 5 years. We kind of don't really know why, but she is determined to go back to her hometown and get her daughter back because her ex's like parents are raising her, and they do not want her involved because of things that have happened in the past, such as the crime that led her to go to jail. So it's a really like heartbreaking story regarding like what Kenna's gone through, what led to her going to jail, her being away from her child. And then it is also a romance story on the other side of things, where she gets to know this bartender named Ledger, who also has point of view chapters in the book. He is kind of the only one that does believe in her and is willing to give her a chance when it comes to her daughter and rebuilding that relationship and rebuilding her life. And this one kind of fell in like the middle of the road Colleen Hoover territory for me as someone who has read all of her books. I feel like the story and the message was great. The romance was decent. However, I don't really read her books for the romance, but I kind of was just missing that wow factor that books like Verity or It Ends With Us has, that I guess just have like bigger twists or just like pack a bigger punch. It was still a really beautiful story, especially by the end. The end got me teary, but I just feel like she's had better books in my opinion. Even some of her newer ones like Heartbones, the romance touched me a lot more in that one, or Regretting You, which just had like even more emotional stuff going on. I just feel like this one was like a 4-star. It could have been better, could have been worse. It still was really easy to read because Colleen Hoover's writing is always amazing and very quick to get through. But yeah, I guess that's all I have to say on that. My second favorite book of the month was You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. This was a super fun romance book that I really highly recommend. It was a 4.5 star rating for me, which is the highest that I've ever rated a romance. It is following Naomi and Nicholas, who are currently engaged. I forget how long they've been engaged at this point, but it kind of was a quick engagement, and they are feeling like they now really resent each other and really regret being engaged. Especially Naomi, who she is the point of view we're hearing from. She's feeling like Nick doesn't respect her and like her life choices, her job, because she just works this kind of like retail job, whereas he's a successful dentist. There's some very like toxic dynamics going on in this relationship, and the first half of the book is honestly just kind of a fun time. There's not really any romance in it because these characters are hating each other. It's like an enemies to lovers romance. It's also a second chance romance because they're falling in love for the second time, but they are just sort of like pranking each other, trying to make the other one break up with them because they don't want to be the one to do the breaking up. Kind of like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. They want the other one to break up with them. So they're just constantly doing rude things to each other, and it gets to be very hilarious. And then the second half of the book is where it has a like more romantic turn, and you just see them starting to have good moments again and realize or remember why they originally fell for each other and just build like a stronger relationship. But it was so fun, so cute, and I just have to highly recommend this one. I feel like not enough people talk about it, so definitely pick it up if you're into like rom-coms. And finally, my favorite book of the month was The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the sequel to The Inheritance Games, which was a very popular YA thriller like last year or the year before. But it's weird because I saw so many people read that book and I haven't really seen as many people read the second one. I saw a couple negative reviews from those that I had seen read it, and I do not understand those because I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I think it was even better than the first one. So I really encourage people to pick the sequel up if you haven't and you love the first one, because I think you'll still love this one. Basically, the mystery is just continuing and the romance drama tension's continuing. So if you haven't heard of this series, I would be shocked. But it's about this girl, Avery. Always forget that. But she is kind of like a misfortuned, poor orphaned girl, and she ends up getting the inheritance of this very rich billionaire when he passes away. And it's this whole mystery of like, why did she get left the inheritance? And she gets wrapped up in all of the family drama. With the Hawthorne family, he has multiple grandsons, and she kind of gets romantically entangled with two of them, and all these secrets are coming out kind of about her parents and her history and all that kind of stuff. This first one left with a bit of a cliffhanger, which is why I didn't give it a full 5 stars. I felt a little bit like I wasn't satisfied, but this one had so many different reveals. I feel like we were constantly getting reveals in this one, so I don't see why people wouldn't like that. And we kind of have a pretty big wrap up of the major mystery. Like, I feel like the third one, which I know there's gonna be, is gonna have to be kind of a new mystery with like some lingering stuff, but they do a good job of like wrapping up a lot and covering a lot of ground in this little book. It's very fast paced. And as I said, the romantic tension is really great too. And I liked her with both of the two guys, but this one kind of made me swing more one way. I don't know, I still like both. I like Grayson and Jameson so much, but I think I'm more Team Jameson now, but I still like them both. But anyways, it's just so fun. So definitely read this series. I highly recommend it, especially if you like YA thrillers, because I feel like these books are killing it. If you like One Up Is Lying, if you like A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, all those that I love, definitely read this. Or if you read it and didn't like it, let me know why, because I enjoyed it a lot. So that's my wrap up of the month. A few romances, a few sequels to series I'm trying to get through. Let me know if you have any thoughts below, and I'll see you guys in my next video next week. Bye.